Let's say you're having a granola bar. As you're opening the granola bar, just tuning into the sound of that wrapper peeling. That's already mindful eating. It's bringing yourself into the present moment instead of just kind of getting that granola bar open, getting it down, and moving on.
Back to Educator University. As teachers, we make nonstop decisions all day long, and it affects how and what we eat. Today, I'm joined by registered dietitian Kathy Brown to support us as educators. We're talking about mindful eating, realistic meal prep, and simple ways teachers can nourish themselves without adding any more stress. Welcome, Kathy.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
It's so good to have you on. And it's kind of fun too, because we've actually done YouTube before together. So it's like, this is like all just coming back to us naturally, right? We have a channel from a long time ago. We should link it down below if you want to watch it. But kind of talking that first question, I kind of want to think about teachers. I mentioned in the intro how they're making nonstop choices all day for everybody all day long. And so when it comes to them eating, they might get to the point where it's just overwhelming. And I kind of want to get your opinion as a dietitian. Why is it so important for teachers and educators to be mindful of what they're eating and also to be mindful of how they're eating?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, when you're giving so much every day into these kids that you're educating and you're planning and you're doing all of these things every day. And so as the saying goes, you can't pour from an empty cup, right? So we need to make sure that you're filling your body to the degree that it needs, right? Nourishing your body in a way that gives you the energy, it helps you sleep better, it helps your digestion feel better, which in turn just helps you feel better. And when you feel good, you're better able to serve your students in a way. And, mindful eating goes beyond just the food that we're putting into our bodies. It helps you to think about, what food is actually not only going in my body, but how is it feeling? So, like, this can help kind of come up with different foods that help you feel better or notice things that make you feel not so great. And it just really helps you navigate that path and narrow down so that you can make the best choices for you day in and day out without having to overthink about it.
Yeah, and I think part of that overthinking is sometimes in the moment when you're feeling like I can't decide, because maybe the day's been kind of full, even at lunch or dinner, maybe you kind of getting to the point where I can't decide. Sometimes meal prep can be a great opportunity for you to make those choices in a space before the meal happens. And you have quite a bit of experience in this area. Could you share maybe some meal preps that you suggest that are easy and things that they could do on the weekends, maybe, or at night the day before when they're feeling a little less stressed?
Yeah, absolutely. So the first thing I like to offer is to find what type of meal prep do you even want to do. So some people that means making entire meals and putting them into containers and like having them ready to go. Other people that just means prepping different sides so that you can pick and choose when you're ready to and just put it all into a container and go. So it looks a little bit different for everybody, but essentially what you're doing is you're setting your future self up for success. So by having whether it's canned veggies or canned beans or, even frozen fruits and veggies on hand, that way you don't have to chop, you don't have to wash, you don't have to even really cook. It's just defrosting, rinsing, seasoning and going. And essentially what you're doing is you're taking the decision work out for your future self, right? So you're creating it now and having these things on hand so that when that moment comes, you're like, I'm just going to go get fast food because I don't have time to think about my next meal. Then you go, oh wait, hold on. I have something in the fridge or I have something in the freezer. I can pull it out really quick and it'll take me 2 minutes to reheat or anything like that. So yeah, ultimately it's thinking of your future self and supporting them.
Yeah, what's your opinion about like semi-prepared things that you could use? For example, I've seen things like salad kits. Something that you've
Yeah.
seen work well for people in your practice?
Yeah, salad kits are huge and honestly several of my clients right now just discovered the beauty of salad kits. The only thing that a lot of time they're missing is protein. So that could be something that you have on hand separately to add that into the salad kit. But yeah, they're wonderful. But as I mentioned too, things like canned foods or frozen foods, not necessarily frozen meals, which those have a time and place too, but even just your frozen veggies or things like that, that take some of the prep work out. Because when you're thinking about even just making your own salad, over half of the time is just you washing and chopping vegetables, right? And so if you take that part out of the work, all of a sudden a salad that would take you 10 minutes to prepare now takes you 2 because it's just dumping everything together essentially. But salads are great. Canned soup is another really good one that I feel like is a little undervalued. Just be mindful of how much sodium is in there. But yeah, canned soup is another good one. There's lots of different shelf stable kind of like bags of rice or veggies, beans, all that kind of stuff. So all those things are valuable. Just be when you're getting some of those pre-made foods, just be really mindful of the salt content and the fat content because that can add up really quick.
I love that suggestion of canned food too, because that's something you can keep in your desk as a teacher. You can keep a little stock. Let's say you forgot lunch or your lunch wasn't substantial enough. You didn't think through like how hungry you'd be. Having some soup or even like you said, the prepared rice, which is I think like you said, self-stable. You can just heat it up in the microwave and then be done. So you always have something that you can eat.
Yep,
So yeah, I love that
exactly.
idea. It doesn't have to be fancy or hard. It can be something just very simple.
Yes.
Yes. I always think it's interesting too. You mentioned with meal prep prepping ingredients rather than prepping meals, and I found that personally be so much more helpful at times because sometimes it gets a little tiring eating the same thing over and over and over again. Do you find that true with your clients as well?
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. It's such a beautiful picture in your mind to be like, yeah, I have these 5 meals and here we go and they're already made. I don't have to do it, but by day 2 or 3 you're like, okay, I'm done with this. I need something else. So, yeah, I have found for myself too and a lot of my clients that, whatever you're making for dinner that night, just prepare some a little extra and then you could change up the seasonings, which surprisingly enough plays a huge role in how much we enjoy a food, right? So you can have the same meal of like, let's say it's rice. Well, we'll take a really classic rice with broccoli and chicken, right? If we have that, but then let's say one day you swap out the rice for quinoa, or you swap out the chicken for black beans and you add a different sauce onto it or different seasonings, you've got a whole new meal, right? And so then it's you keep the base the same of like a protein, a veggie, and a whole grain, and then you change out what each of those are or what the seasoning is, and all of a sudden you have this flow of making a meal so that again you're not having to start from scratch and think and be like, okay, now what do I want to start with? You have this base and then you can build from there. So that's where prepping ingredients kind of helps a little bit.
Yeah, I love that piece where you can kinda make it you could make it, have, like, Asian flavor, or you could have, like, all the different flavors, and you can just decide that day what you wanna have and decide with sauces or, like, seasonings, like you said, that can, kind of change the whole dynamic of the dish. So, yeah, I love that, I love that. I think one thing I do wanna talk about along with meal prep, of course, we hope in our ideal life that we have everything prepped and ready to go and we can get it all figured out, but sometimes life doesn't happen exactly like that, and then I notice sometimes I've heard stories of people saying, "Well, sometimes I maybe even have prep, but I feel like things get hard, it gets emotional, and I feel like that I wanna go to food to maybe I don't even realize that I'm mindlessly snacking or I'm not thinking about what I'm eating." How do you help your clients work through some of those things that they're dealing with?
Yeah. So some of that, usually where I start with is working on finding your breath in those moments. This comes down to kind of my experience with teaching yoga as well. Because in a yoga practice, when it gets hard, you come back to your breath. And in every posture, every sequence, you're always coming back to your breath. And so I start by teaching my clients how to do that as well. When first it comes to notice, what you don't notice, you can't change, right? So if you're um just observing yourself, right? Pretend like you're your best friend or even you're just like a scientist looking over your shoulder, you know, judging, not adding any emotion to anything, just simply observing and be like, "Okay, what do I do?" Like pretend you're in like a high stress day and you're like, "What do I typically do on this kind of a day?" And just be curious about it. Take notes for a little while over the course of a week or so and then you'll start to notice patterns popping up. And once you notice those patterns, then you can start working on those things. And so then it could be sometimes it's replacing foods or sometimes it's combining foods. But essentially, it's what we don't, what we do want to do is make food enjoyable and not the enemy. Right. And so we're making it a mindfulness experience of sitting down when you can, because it's not always possible. But even if you're having 2 minutes to eat your lunch, take a moment, take a breath, and slow down. Even just for 5 seconds of one inhale and one exhale can make a huge difference in how you're enjoying your food and giving yourself that moment to move on to the next task that you have going on.
Yeah, and I think that's such an interesting connection you made to like, emotional eating, connecting to that to mindful eating because they actually are quite connected. Because if you can eat mindfully, then you're like, oh, I'm eating, I'm enjoying this. It's not like I'm reacting to something emotionally. I'm actually just like enjoying this food. And you kind of touched on mindful eating earlier. I'd love to hear a little more about like kind of your tips and tricks for that. Things like plating, or you mentioned the breathing beforehand, other things that you would suggest in terms of creating that mindful eating experience for especially a teacher, maybe at lunch or after school in the evening.
Yeah. So I first recommend if you can find a good 5 to 10 minutes to practice a full mindful eating routine. That way you get to feel what the full experience is like because there is no such thing as mindful eating all the time, right? Because it's literally taking all 5 of your senses into your meal. And that takes a lot of time, right? That takes a lot of effort, it takes a lot of mental capacity. It's a very involved experience. But once you experience that whole thing, you can take some of that into your day whenever you want to. So it could be something as simple as when you do have a moment and you need to grab a snack, it's a breath and it's a as you're let's say you're having a granola bar, as you're opening the granola bar, just tuning into the sound of that wrapper peeling, right? That's already mindful eating. It's bringing yourself into the present moment instead of just kind of getting that granola bar open, getting it down and moving on, right? You're bringing yourself into now. And some of that can be with breathing, some of that can be with just the simple act of slowing down and choosing even just one of your 5 senses to pay attention to when you're starting that meal or that snack. But yeah, it doesn't have to be mindful eating all the time.
I love that. I love taking the pressure off because it's like, "Oh, hey, mindfully, it's too much." It's like, there's too much pressure. Just enjoy your food and relax. I wonder if part of mindful eating, I mean, this is, I guess, part of my own journey is, I've been kind of just diving into the fact of like introvert, extrovert, who I am. And I think a lot of teachers might be listening thinking, okay, my personality is this way or that way. And I think with mindful eating, part of that with like lunch, for example, maybe some teachers want to eat by themselves. And that's part of mindfulness. Some like to eat with a group. And I think there's maybe have you seen that your clients in terms of introvert, extrovert have a sense of like, is that part of the experience, figuring out what fits for your stress and the way your day is going sort of thing?
Absolutely, absolutely, and it can vary day by day too, right? Because sometimes there's days where you're if you're working with younger kids, you're, like, constantly touched and you need that, like, separation of just, "I need my self to myself." And then there could be other days where maybe you have a, more kind of separation from students and you have just a few classes, right? Like if you're a professor and you only have maybe one class that day and you're having this and you just want to see more people, right? So it can vary from person to person. It can vary from day to day. But yeah, essentially it's trial and error and figuring out what works for you, how you like to eat. Some people, like you said, some people like to sit by themselves, open up a book. If you had the time to just kind of chill and read, whatever it is that you need to do to refill your cup, as I mentioned earlier. So if that means being by yourself, if that means sitting with a couple teachers and having a talk about something outside of your work, that can be helpful too, right? Getting your brain to reset to who you are as a person, right? Beyond just being an educator. And that can help reset your day as well.
Yeah, I enjoy you saying the nuances of like day by day, and also the fact that, also what you're talking about and how the interactions socially are happening is also a big part. I will say sometimes with teaching, there is moments where you end up talking about the job, and then it's like, okay, well, I'm not really getting a break. I'm just getting more of the same. Not always, but that's something on my channel I've had a conversation about. It's like, okay, we got to figure out ways to create some balance, and I'm glad you're bringing that up as well. So I think along with meal prep, you touched on the idea of a granola bar, but I think one thing that we do like to have sometimes is snacks because we have sometimes a little moment in the morning or a little moment after school or even throughout the day that we have like, kids at recess to kind of refuel. I'm kind of curious about your experience with snacks and any tips and tricks you have in terms of choosing good snacks that would help to sustain, and also any tips for what you like to prep for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to snacking, everyone's a little bit different. Okay, I now I'm sounding like a broken record because it's true. Everyone's a little
Mhm.
bit different for all of these things. But when it comes to snacking, some people like to snack, first of all, some people don't. right? And that's okay. There is no rule that says you have to snack. I find that it can be valuable if you don't know when your next break will come, and or if you know that you have to grade papers during your lunch break or whatever it is that is taking over your lunch. Definitely think about having a snack so that you're not skipping too long between meals. But when you're choosing snacks, this is where I'm going to bring it back to mindful eating, because once you get to know yourself and how your body responds to different foods, you'll be able to make choices about your snack based on how you're feeling. So I'm always a fan of carrying some things with you, whether it's granola bars, nuts, dry, well, maybe not nuts if your school is allergy free, but seeds are usually pretty good. Dried fruit, fruits that are in their own packaging. So, like a banana, an orange, an apple, those kind of things that are easy. Grapes tend to get squished. So, things like that. If you can, veggies, carrot sticks, celery sticks, cherry tomatoes, all those kind of things. We can go beyond that, but just thinking about those things, when you're keeping some variety on hand so that when you're going to take a snack, you can think about, what do I need right now to set myself up for success in the rest of the day, right? So maybe you're like, man, I am so hungry. I need something that's going to fill me up. And so then you're going to want something with protein and fat, right? That could be like, even jerky is a really popular one now too. Those types of things are beneficial. Or maybe you just need a little pick me up. Maybe you have a little bit of a sweet tooth and it is a little bit of that emotional eating moment. Grab some. That's when the dried fruit comes in hand. If you like salty, have a few pretzels or even a small bag of chips, right? It's okay to eat all these things, but use them as a tool to help support you into that next thing. And so then you're balanced, right? In treating snacks as kind of like a mini meal to make sure that they're a little bit balanced. There's a little bit of benefit, but it's also satisfying whatever you need to continue on into your day.
Yeah, I think that snacking, like you said, it's very personal if you want to or not, and then just choosing snacks that fit the mindfulness that you're in is a great tip. And also thinking through the day and how much time you have to eat lunch or dinner and how much time there is between those kind of things, just kind of natural things to think about as you're making snacks. I want to talk a little bit more about not just snacking, but mindfulness in general, because you kind of touched on it a little bit, but mindful eating isn't just about food. And you also have experience you kind of touched on in yoga. And I'm kind of curious how you helped your clients not just slow down with food, but thinking about mindfulness in a wider sense that's helped them with their health.
Yeah. So with mindfulness in general, it's one of those things that just takes practice, and you can come at it in any direction you want. I usually go with food because that's my specialty, but you can come at it from any angle, right? Like any, if you have a favorite type of physical activity to do, bring your five senses into that, right? Maybe you really like to lift weights, right? So the next time you're at the gym, maybe you start to listen to the different sounds that you're hearing. Or maybe it's the sight, right? Like, what's the lighting like? How many people are there? Just bringing yourself into the present moment. It could also even be in like a teaching setting. This might sound a little funny, but like noticing the smell of your classroom, right? Because every space that we walk into has a different smell. And so noticing that can bring you into the present moment. Maybe there's some flowers outside the window that you always smell in the springtime, or maybe the room was just cleaned and you can smell the cleaner that the staff uses to clean all the tables or something like that to bring you into the present moment. But yeah, essentially mindfulness is a way to bring yourself into now. And the benefit of bringing yourself into now is that we're then not thinking of the future. We're not thinking of the past, right? The future can give us anxiety. The past, we can sometimes want to go back there and reflect on that, but being now is the only place we can be. And so remembering that and coming back to that can help ease some of the stressors of just being in the day as well.
Yes, I love that. Thinking about kind of those senses and those five senses we have and keeping that mindfulness as we can. It is challenging sometimes as a teacher. So, but I love that. I love that kind of just idea of being mindful and thinking through it like that. I
Yeah,
want to talk a
and
little. Go ahead.
I was just gonna say, and just taking the pressure off of yourself to be perfect with it. It's not a perfect practice, right? Thinking about it as coming back to your breath, like your breath just happens throughout the day, but you can put focus onto it to breathe in deeper, exhale longer. You can do the same with mindfulness. Like your body is sensing all of these things all the time. You're just bringing awareness to it. So it doesn't have to be perfect and it doesn't have to be all day every day being in this like beautifully mindful like setting. It's just coming back to it when you need that little reprieve.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's no perfection. It's just about growth every single day. I love that.
Yes.
I'm kind of curious. I mean, with you have probably a lot of tips on the back of your mind, the tip of your kind of in your mind about nutrition, but is there a simple habit or mindset shift that a teacher could do to feel more balanced or nourished that you would want to give if you're talking to someone in that position?
Yeah, the hardest part about that is like where to start.
Right. It's a big question.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a loaded question, but I would say to I guess okay, so I guess my thought would be based on all the input that we get these days from social media, from traditional media sources, from just driving down the street, right? You see fast food signs, you see all these things, right? We get all this input from media. And so when it comes to nutrition, I guess my first thing is to whatever you're seeing online, pause for a moment and really think about it with a curious mind, right? Because it's really easy to scroll through something and be like, oh, yeah, I want to look like that person or I want to eat like that person or that looks amazing. And then we compare ourselves, right? And so instead of thinking about these things from a perspective of like I need to improve myself, use it as a tool and think critically about it to take a step back and be like, is this, if I do this, will this add benefit to my life and will it actually help me? Or is it something that I'm just trying to change about myself because it's the next thing that I swiped on, TikTok or whatever it is. So take a moment to really let those things sink in and it doesn't have to be everything, right? Like we all are doing the best we can with everything that we've got and being okay with that is sometimes a really good and healthy step into self-care and taking care of ourselves.
That's a good reminder, and I'm sure in your profession, you're getting a lot of people coming in saying, "I should do this and that because I saw it online," and I'm imagining that's overwhelming. It's overwhelming as a consumer, but then I'm imagining the flow that you must get from people saying they've seen this or that must be a lot to translate. Yeah.
It is, and I've felt it myself too. I've caught myself scrolling through things and being like, "Wait, Cap, okay, hold on, slow down." And so it's really easy to do. That's what it's made to do, right? It's made to be flashy and engaging and all these things. And so just remember that when you're scrolling through.
Yes, yeah, so important to remember it's just a moment. It's just someone, sharing something, and I have found some great recipes online when I'm scrolling
Absolutely.
sometimes, but I will say sometimes the health advice, it goes from, like, one extreme to another, like, just in terms of, like, certain foods or different, like, macros being whatever, like, seen as different ways, and I'm like, "Okay, this is getting a
Yes.
little much, right?" We just gotta enjoy
Yes.
it for what it is, so
Yes,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, big red flag if they're like making these big promises or saying like, "Oh, you only need to do this and it'll solve every problem." Then it's like, "Okay, step back." Will it? No, probably not. But there's sometimes a grain of truth into what they're saying. And yeah, essentially finding that grain of truth and using that instead of the big full thing that they're promising.
Yes, great reminder. Yes. Well, Kathy, thank you so much for sharing so much information for teachers. Are there any final thoughts that we haven't covered that you want to share with teachers before you kind of move into some little fun questions?
Yeah. I guess the only other thing that I want to say is to listen once you get reconnected with your body through some mindful eating or some intuitive eating, listening to your body and its cues, go with that instinct, right? Listen to what your body is saying, tastes good or feels good or gives you energy or anything like that because that means so much more than what experts or anybody else is saying externally. Because while we all share so much similarity in how our bodies work and what our bodies need, we're also individual in what actually works for us, right? Because of lifestyle, because of various health issues or access or anything like that. And so learn about what you need and what makes you feel good and stay true to that. Let your intuition really listen to it, essentially.
Yeah, and that kinda goes back to what you're saying about watching social media, but taking it with a grain of salt in terms of what fits best for your body and your lifestyle too, like you mentioned earlier. I mean, kinda bringing it right back to the beginning, which is the idea of, like, if you need to have a can of soup in your desk so you have something to eat for lunch, it's not perfect, like, it's not, maybe it's not the most gourmet meal, but it's food that will be nourishing and, it maybe fits well in your lifestyle, so I love that, all these quick little tips we've gotten today. We have some fun little questions, and then I'll ask, of course, where they can find you.
Okay.
And these questions you can answer in a word or as long as you'd like to answer them. The first question I always ask is your favorite lunch, which seems really appropriate for this conversation. So, favorite lunch.
Favorite lunch, leftovers. Leftovers from dinner are my absolute favorite lunch because I don't have to prep anything for it. If I do have the time to prepare a lunch, I love a baked sweet potato with some black beans and tahini on top. It sounds kind of odd, but it's delicious.
That sounds good, actually. I like that. Sounds good. Your best emotional regulation tip.
Same with your breath.
That's a good one. Teacher that made a difference in your life.
Gosh, my 3rd grade teacher, actually. I'll share a little story, but I was always a pretty shy kid, and I never liked to raise my hand, and it sounds silly to say now, but, like, before 3rd grade, I would be, like, in the back of the room, like, "Don't call on me." But this my 3rd grade teacher really helped me step out of that and find a little bit of confidence, and that's literally stuck with me through life.
What a great influence. What a great story. I
Yeah.
love that. A last lesson that you taught.
Last lesson that I taught. Well, I guess it would have to be a lesson to my daughter about, probably manners, just being in public.
Important
So,
lessons to have. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
love that. Well, thank you so much for sharing everything, Kathy. Where can my audience find you? And I will also link it in the description below.
Yeah, so I'm on Instagram. That's my preferred platform at Kathy's Mindful Moments. And so you can check me out there. I do a lot of tips and this kind of stuff. I did restart a YouTube channel as well. And so there it's a little bit of a variety of cooking demonstrations right now, and I'll be adding some yoga practices there too.
Yeah, you just made recently a pumpkin chili or some kind of chili recipe, looked like a lot really good plant-based chili. It looked really good. So yeah, go check it out, everybody. Go give her some love on our YouTube channel. It'll be kind of fun for you guys. It's mostly plant-based for the YouTube channel?
It is mostly
Okay,
plant-based. Yes. Yes.
cool. Awesome. Yeah. Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kathy, and I look forward to hearing the comments from the viewers and teachers, seeing how they're going to practice a little mindful eating, maybe get some tips on how to prepare and get ready for a great, healthy last part of the year.